Hello, everybody. It's good to see you again. Welcome to another night of live reads with me, Dr. Plague. Oh, it's been a long week, but I hope you guys have had a good week. Thank you, Blondie. Yes, everybody come join the Discord if you haven't already. It's a good time in there. I've got pictures of my chickens, so if you'd like to see chicken pictures, then that's the place to do it. I got them a couple of days ago. I've got 5 hens and a rooster, and they're all just lovely. Like, we named the rooster Bert for some reason, and we've been spending enough time with him that you can basically pick him up at this point. He's very docile, but it's been a lot of fun. I've got a poster somewhere around here that I need to hang in the background. That's right, and the kitties. Oh, like this fella right here. He's being extra sleepy right now, so he's just kind of chilling. Well, sure. Hi, Dad. I hope you're doing well. Losing somebody is never easy, especially when it's your brother. And I hope you're doing well. If you give me his name, I'll totally name drop him. But otherwise, hi, Dad. I hope Hope you're doing well as you can be. That's rough. Well, I was kind of hoping that they would be here since I'm going to announce the winners of the contest. There were only two, so there she is. There were only two, so hold on a tick. Well, in that case, hi Roger. I hope you're doing well. I'm sorry for your loss. I hope it gets easier, man. I know that's never easy. It's hard to lose somebody like that. Any rate, let's see here. I've got so we only had 2 entries for the September entry. I tried to check on the other one this morning, but I guess my access had been revoked or something. I remember reading it a couple of weeks ago. So Leia, you, and Master P are our September winners. Yay! Since there was only two of you guys, I feel pretty confident that you guys had the best stories. They were both really good, though. Keep in mind, August contest is still open. There's no real theme on the August contest, so if you want to submit, I'll put some information up in the community. And, you can submit your entries for your own chance to win a signed copy of one of my books. I'll get with the winners of the September contest so that you can tell me which one of the books that you want. Yay! And I'll get you a signed copy because I'm about to send out the Dollar General Beyond books, so I can just ship all of those at the same time now. Let's see. Oh, yes. Hang on. I gotta show you guys something. It'll look even better in my office when I get a frame for it. But since I was part of the project, Derek sent me a really nice Shadows in the Pines podcast poster. So I'll get that one up. I have that one on the wall somewhere at some point or another. So that'll look really cool in the background. I think that's really about it for news. Other than that, it's just been business as usual around here. Thank you, Blondie. I like it. It was a pretty cool poster. And when he said he was going to send me one, I got excited. It'll be nice to have some posters and stuff to hang in the background of stuff I've worked on. I don't know where you would get your own. I would guess if you went to the comment section of his videos, maybe he's got merch up or something. He sent me that one, so I don't know. But if you want your own, he'd probably get you guys some. I don't know. Was a good story. It was a mess when he sent it to me, so I'm glad it came out really well. I won't air secrets there, but that's why you don't buy things off of Fiverr. But it was really a good podcast to help him with, and it was nice to get in there and do some work. Any rate, we've got. Hang on, let me grab my recording stuff here. What about you guys? You guys done anything fun this week? I hope so. It's a holiday weekend, so hopefully you guys have got some fun stuff planned for this weekend or for next week. Yes. Hello. Oh. Hold on a sec. Oh. Had to do some passing there. Anyway, let's see. Hopefully you guys saw the end of the Kawakala Mall story and liked it. I thought it ended pretty alright, so good stuff there. Nice little end of summer story there. Got you guys your usual 5 stories this week, so that'll be cool. We've got a new Cashmere story. Monday's story is going to be a new Ranger Tales. I've got a new Stragview story for Friday, and then we've got our usual collection of short stories as well. So that'll be fun. Man, it's almost August. I've got to start on my Halloween stories before long. Halloween's really creeping up on me again. You know me, I like to put on for Halloween. Oh yeah, I felt like it was. I feel like it was realistic. The Kawakala story, he didn't go in there and last action hero it or anything. He just kind of survived. I mean, and I think in that situation, that's the most important. Is just kind of surviving. Let's see, who have we got here? Hello to everyone who has joined us. Hello, Bella and Blondie, Susie Q, and Leia, and I know I'm missing somebody. Hello, Shanti. We're glad you could make it. But yeah, it's hello. Do you want out? Or are you just after pets? Oh, come here, yo. It's not normal, but it's a different gray kitty today. Somebody got locked outside yesterday, so she got attacked by a dog. Nothing too bad, but she's more of a homebody now, it would seem. Well, let's get rolling, I reckon. Don't you walk on my keyboard, you. Okay, so we'll get going with our Monday story. That one is Tails. She is called Tails because she has a tail. Her sister is named Bob, and she does not have a tail. So, I hope that alleviates confusion there. Let's see. Okay, we'll get rolling here. With our first story, which is our Monday story. So it's our Ranger Tale story. And she's trying her best, I know. She doesn't realize that her lack of thumbs may be detrimental. That's why Nermal's helping by taking a nap. Alrighty, so this week's Ranger Tale. This week's Ranger Tale is called The Effigy, and I hope you like it. The Burning Night, I asked, looking up at the flyer. The Burning Night, Jacob said, sounding excited. Uh-huh, I said, looking over the flyer with a critical eye. So, it's a bonfire night, or something? Something like that, he agreed. We all get together and drink and celebrate the onset of fall. Right, and why wasn't I invited last year? Jacob looked thoughtful. Well, we usually don't invite the junior rangers. They normally have to work the night after the burning night, but now you're good to go, so, you're going, right? I thought about it. I wasn't a huge drinker, but I did like the sound of it. It sounded fun. I could hang out and meet some of the other rangers from the spots that I hadn't seen yet, and just kind of chill for a while. I told Jacob I was in, and he slapped me 5 before heading back to work. I probably should have mentioned, but I was recently promoted from junior ranger to full-fledged ranger. I've been working in the park for nearly 2 years now, and it was nice to finally be recognized for that work. Jacob had said they would normally throw me a party, but since it was so close to burning night, they were going to mix the two. That made me feel like I had to be there, so I figured I'd go have some fun and maybe feel involved in park. In park politics for a change. Lucky, Carol said when I told her. I wish I was allowed to go. I laughed. Well, maybe they'll promote you after your probationary period, too. I didn't think I'd ever actually explained who my co-workers are. Let's try that one again. That one came out wonky. I don't think I've ever actually explained who my co-workers are. I'm from Post 4, located on the western end of the park. Each post has a central post that's labeled Logistics, and each central post has 4 smaller posts under it. There are 4 central posts in the whole park, and each post has 6 or 7 people who work at them. Most of those people are junior rangers, and it's rare to have more than 3 rangers at a post. Noise. Post 4 is home to me, Jacob, our senior ranger, Carol, who works overnight, Daryl, who works when I'm off, Roger, who works when Jacob is off, and Cindy, who works when Carol is off. Somebody's having a bad time out there, sounds like. Hold that thought, guys. All right, you. You are making entirely too much racket, ma'am. Come on. Come on. Yes, yes, I know. You would like to go out. There you go. Noisy kitty cats. Let's see. And Cindy, who works when Carol is off. In a way, we have 2 shifts. But we all have to answer to Head Ranger Gavin when the crap hits the fan. So we usually stick pretty close together. Daryl, Cindy, and Carol are all junior rangers, while Roger, Jacob, and I are full-fledged rangers. Some of you have wondered if it Yeah, if I could read things. Some of you have wondered if I work 7 days a week, so hopefully that helps a little in scheduling and logistics. So, Saturday night at about 6:30, I showed up with a 12-pack of beer and a cheesecake that I'd made from scratch. I felt a little surprised that I'd made it at all. I had expected that this would be held at a campground or at least a picnic area. Jacob's player. Blech. Flyer. I ought to run a drinking game for every time my text-to-speech app puts out the wrong word, but most of you guys would be dead. Jacob's flyer had led me to what I could nicely call an access road, where I had to walk for about a mile into the darkening woods. There was a mess of cars parked at the end of the road, and as I pulled up, I saw a young woman that I vaguely knew getting out of a car with a box of wine under one arm and a bag of chips in her hand. I thought her name might be Gabby or Gladys, and when she saw me and waved, I was embarrassed to realize that she knew my name, even though I didn't know hers. "I'm Grace. Nice to meet you." "Grace, okay, well, I'd been way off. I'm glad someone else showed up right about now. The woods are a little spooky at night sometimes. Care to walk with a girl?" I told her I would, and we headed off into the woods to see what this whole burning night thing was about. "First time?" Wrong voice. "First time?" I asked, as the crickets tuned up and the ghost of a party got louder all around us. "Nope," she said, "but it's only my second time. I just got promoted last year. How about you?" "Yup, this is my first burning night." "Any advice?" "Yeah, don't let Kevin mix your drinks. He tends to be a little heavy with the tequila." I laughed, not sure who Kevin was either. "What's it all for, anyway?" Jacob really wouldn't give me many details. We're reading The Effigy, which is our Ranger Tales story this week, if you're just joining us. Let's see. Grace got a weird look as she stared up the path, and I didn't think she was going to answer me for a minute. "It's about renewal, about the changing seasons, and about protecting ourselves from what's out there. At least that's what Marcus told me last year." "Protecting ourselves?" I asked, not sure what she meant. I started to scoff, but then I remembered all the weird stuff I'd encountered out here, and thought better of it. She smiled. "You must be lucky if you don't think we need protecting. They told me I'd seen some weird stuff out there, but some of it's been downright terrifying. You're from Post 4, right? You know, they call that the spooky post. We all see our fair amount of stuff, but they say Post 4 gets the worst of it. That place..." Meh. "The place we're heading to is certainly a spot that's figured into a few spooky tales." "What do you mean?" I asked, as the party and the music started to get louder. "This is the place where all those people went missing about 5 years ago. Some kind of cult or something was camping out here, and they accidentally got the attention of something bad. It drew a lot of them into the woods, and they say that some of them were never seen again. It's a spooky place. I remember feeling like I was being watched last year, and it's not some place I'd want to spend the night if I could help it." I wanted to ask her more, but we came out of a clearing where the party was in full swing. Someone had set up a folding table with snacks and drinks. There was another table with alcoholic beverages, and several other people were playing beer pong on another table, or various card games at another. It was pretty wild. People were dancing. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, Lou's here. Hey, Lou. see. People were dancing to music or just standing around drinking, and I got the feeling that a few of them had been here for hours. The poster had said that it started at 5, but I guess they'd been pre-gaming as they set up. Jacob walked over, clearly intoxicated, and handed me a bottle of something that smelled like rubbing alcohol. Everybody says hi.
Hello.
My wife says hi.
Not trying to interrupt. Just need things.
Okay. Finally, here you got to catch up. The bonfire starts at sunset. You don't want to be sober for that, I can assure you. I asked him what he meant, but he waved at someone and wandered off about that time. I don't know how I had missed it on the way in, but as I took a sip of the maybe rubbing alcohol, I caught sight of the effigy. It was a giant wicker deer that looked like it had been made out of bone in certain places. It was easily 7 feet tall. What? Okay. And I can't imagine how long it must have taken them to make it. It was standing, and it was a bunch of... Hang on, guys. I gotta do some edits on the fly here. And it was made from a bunch of loose brush and bits of wire. Its intention seemed pretty clear. Like any good effigy, there was going to be a fire, and they were going to light this thing up, though I still wasn't quite sure why. I remembered that... I remembered that Grace had said it was to ward off spirits, and wondered if I had really signed up for a park service or if I'd actually joined some kind of cult. I hung out for a little while, and Grace had been right about the place. As night descended, it became more and more creepy. I know how that sounds, but it's true. The whole place just seemed a little darker than it should have. Outside the perimeter of the fire, it was like anything could exist out there. And it almost felt like those flames were keeping something awful at bay. It was still warm, fall nowhere close to coming, but it was hard to keep the chill off of my bones as it ran up them. When someone put their hand on my shoulder, I felt like I might be about to shake right out of my skin. I turned and found Grace standing behind me, but clearly she had been enjoying herself a little too much. She was swaying a lot, talking much too loudly, and I think she was wearing more of her drink than might be going into her. "Great party," she said, smiling at me like we were in on some private joke. "How are you enjoying yourself?" "Fine, I guess. It's pretty creepy out here. You weren't wrong." She smiled toothily. "Just wait till the bonfire starts." I wouldn't have long to wait. Derek was approaching quickly. No, that says Dark. Not Derek. I can't read. Dark was approaching quickly, and as the shadows lengthened outside of our little campsite, I heard someone tap the outside of their glass. I turned and found, to my surprise, that it was Head Ranger Gavin. When did he get here? I didn't know, but he had arrived and seemed the soberest of all of us. He looked out amidst the group, and instead of being upset that we were all drunk in the woods, he seemed pretty happy to see us all enjoying ourselves. Blech. Try that one again. That was a mouthful. He seemed pretty happy to see us all enjoying ourselves. He said something quietly to one of the other rangers, and he handed him a torch, which he held up beside the effigy. My friends, another year has come to an end. As we go into the next fiscal year for our beloved park, it's time we make our sacrifice. So, raise your glasses as I raise this torch, and let us hope we can stave off the darkness for another year. Another year, they all intoned. It was weird, like they'd practiced or something. Head Ranger Gavin took the torch and tossed it onto the deer, made out of sticks and bones, and as it took fire, something strange happened. It burned quickly. Most of the components were flammable, but as it burned, I heard something let out a screech in the woods beyond. It was like something had slit the throat of a monster deer, and as it burned to ash, I could hear things moving out in the woods. They sounded large. Most of them sounded more like animals than spirits. They were angry about what we were doing, and they were making their anger well known. They threw themselves against the trees around the campsite, shaking the limbs and wrestling the leaves on the ground. But they seemed unable to approach. Whatever this was, it kept them at bay, and I was very glad for it. I felt someone move up beside me, and looked down to find it was Grace. She reached out and took my hand, but instead of looking at the effigy, she was looking at me. She seemed to be judging how I was taking all this, and I had to admit I wasn't taking it very well. I'd seen a lot of odd things in the park, most of which I've told you about, but this just seemed primal, not altogether human. We were no better than cavemen trying to please our forest gods so they didn't gobble us up in the middle of the night. I suppose, if I thought too hard about it, that's what we were doing. That needs a period. As it burned, and the thing in the woods tried to get us, my coworkers laughed and whooped like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. They threw their hands up and cheered, beating their chests and laughing as the creature in the woods seemed stopped by whatever strange magic we had made here. That's when I realized that they all knew in some form or another. They had expected this to happen, and now it was just another completion of another old ritual. Would you take me home? Grace asked. Are you sure? I asked, not sure that any of us should venture out into those woods right now. Oh, yes. After this whole thing, nothing ever really comes after us in the woods. That's what this is all about, you know? Keeping us safe. I think I'm a little too drunk to drive home, but I don't think I want to stay out in the woods either. Like I said, it's just so creepy out here, after all's said and done. So we walked back to my car, and sure enough, nothing came out to bother us. Grace leaned against me as I went and gave me a pretty coherent set of instructions on how to get to her house. To those of you who are wondering, I did not take advantage of a drunk woman, so don't worry. I helped her inside, got her on the couch, and then locked up behind myself as I left. Say what you will about me, but I'm a gentleman, and I'm not going to take advantage of someone who's too inebriated to tell me yes or no. Then I drove home myself, probably soberer than any person had any right to be after what I'd seen. The longer I work at the park, the more strange things it seems I witness, but it doesn't make me want to stop working there. I love the park, I love the forest, and I don't think any amount of weirdness is ever going to change that. My mother always said that when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think a lot about that as I come back to work every day at the park. The woods are old, and old things have a right to be strange. So I'll just keep right on exploring them and see how weird it can get. Alrighty, that's our Ranger Tale for the week. Let's see. What should we read next? I think maybe we'll read our Wednesday Cashmere story next. What do you guys think? Does that sound pretty good? I hope so, because that's probably what I'm going to do. I love my little community in the comment section. You guys are always so lively. Well, today's Cashmere story is going to focus on someone we've heard about, but we haven't yet met. His name is John Marvolo, and he is the voice of Kashmir, which is the name of our story. So, I hope you guys enjoy hearing about the voice of Kashmir. John Marvolo walked into the recording studio at 107.4 Mountain Radio like someone coming home after a long day. He loved being at the radio station. It was one of his favorite places in all of Kashmir. And just knowing that he got to come here every day and speak to the people from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. was a great joy to him. It wasn't often you looked into a job, or wasn't often. No, that's not the one. Hello, Kevin and Misbehave and Osiris. Glad you guys could make it. Let's try that again. It wasn't often you took a job and got to be the voice of an entire town, and John felt very blessed to be that voice. "Good morning, Gladys," he said to his receptionist and secretary. "Any good news today?" Gladys looked up from her computer and smiled at him. "Well, there's a story about the upcoming event at the Botanical Gardens. There's the new arrivals to greet, all 4 of them, and there's a new story out of Atlanta that the mayor wants us to talk about." John blew out a whistle. Whew. So many new faces these days. It's nice to see our little town really taking off in popularity. Well, I'm going to go get started on the show. Be sure to feed whatever I need into the teleprompter, and I'll read it out. John headed into the booth, set down his coffee, and got to work. He turned off the music that had been playing since the night before, and queued up the intro for today's show. He'd been doing this for quite some time, for as long as he could remember, at least, and he couldn't imagine doing anything else. His mother had always said that when you loved what you did, you never worked a day in your life. And in this case, she had been right. Some days, it seemed that John Marvolo worked very little. Excuse me. You know how it is, Blondie. Cashmere gets all kinds of walk-ins. Good morning, friends and neighbors, and welcome to another beautiful day in the city of Cashmere. I'm the voice of Cashmere, the indomitable John Marvolo, here with all the news y'all will ever need. John started with a puff piece about the high school football team and how they had done last Friday. John claimed to be an alumni of Cashmere High School, but who could really remember these things? John knew that he hadn't always existed here, and to claim so would have been a lie. Even so, he liked to pretend, and he supposed there was no real harm in it. Everyone here was from somewhere else if you came right down to it, and a little harmless make-believe wasn't going to hurt anyone. Grammarly has the worst time with Cashmere. I don't know how many times I have to change it in there before it picks it up. We hope to see you at the game on Friday as the Cashmere Cryptids go head-to-head with Ravenloft Prep once again. It'll be their third game against them this season, and I suppose you could say the rivalry stands as strong as ever. Football rivalry aside, I would hope that everyone can still come together as members of this town when the time comes. He saw an alert pop up on the teleprompter, and as John read it, he gave a thumbs up to Gladys and turned back to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting reports that there's been a wreck over on Old Mill Road that you'll want to avoid. EMS is on the way, but my goodness. I don't know how it got sergeant from sheriff. Sheriff Guthrie has reported saying that they don't need any looky-loos hanging around the site. Let's hope both drivers are all right. Accidents in Cashmere were pretty rare. Most people chose to walk, but there were a few who struck firmly to the idea that they needed a car to get around. He wondered if it had been Barbara Kinney again, the woman who was in danger of having her license revoked after the last time. He supposed he'd get a full report when that one came out, and at the heart of it, John was kind of a nosy Parker. He supposed all newsmen were, but his nose seemed to be nosier than most. Oh, yeah. He's doing the best he can there. Today's segment is brought to you by Cashmere Sundries. No matter what you're looking for, Cashmere Sundries is the place to find it. The owner has asked me to mention that Tuesdays and Thursdays are yellow tag sales, and anything you find with the yellow tag is 25% off. So remember to stop by Cashmere Sundries and see what they've got in stock. It's always so important to support local businesses. Hey, Brandy. Thanks for joining us. John took a sip of his coffee and smacked his lips as the lukewarm liquid filled his mouth. It was just the right amount of lukewarm that he always enjoyed. Let me try that again. Okay. That was just supposed to be. It was just the right amount of warm that he could enjoy without sacrificing taste buds. That was really how he liked it. And though he had never gotten a taste for iced coffee, he supposed he would have bought most of their stock if they could figure out how to make a good, lukewarm cup of coffee. There we go. Sheriff Guthrie has requested that all citizens stay away from the house on 728 Weimer Street. It's nobody's business what's going on there, and it doesn't concern anyone in town. Those caught outside the house will be fined and jailed if they do not leave immediately. Keep in mind that even though he is only the temporary sheriff, Sheriff Guthrie does have arresting powers. I think our temporary sheriff is doing a fine job, and I, for one, will be putting my vote behind him come January. Anyone with half a brain would be, John thought to himself. The alternative was a gaggle of deputies that Guthrie had kept around after the previous administration. They were good enough boys, but none of them really inspired him in the way of confidence. Just one, Brandy. We're on the second one. I don't know what it... Oh, I just read it with the wrong inflection. But none of them really inspired him in the way of confidence. None of them were a match for the sheriff they had lost, but Guthrie was the closest they were going to get, and that would have to do. He had been sad to hear about the death of the previous sheriff, Sheriff Masterson, but this was Kashmir, and people did come and go. Whatever had happened at the Weimer Street house sounded pretty nasty, but the sheriff hadn't even told John what it was. He supposed he had his reasons, but if you wanted someone to report the news, you really needed to give them the scoop. Kashmir Botanical Gardens has asked me to remind everyone of their upcoming Halloween event. Now, before you go checking your calendars, I know it's August, but the garden wants to remind everyone that they remain open through the support of the community. So if you've been thinking about checking out the garden and their new layout, now would be the time to go have a look. Locals get a 15% discount on all ticket sales, so take advantage and have a look at what they've cooked up this year. There we go. John would certainly be there on opening night. The garden never failed to impress when it came to their yearly events, and he remembered the one they'd had last year fondly. The place always seemed a little creepy, but it was hard to ignore all the cool stuff they usually got up to. John wondered where they got the budget for that kind of thing, but he supposed it was best not to ask questions like that. In Kashmir, people who stuck their nose where it didn't belong usually got 'em cut off. That's all for the moment. Enjoy the smooth sounds of Kashmir, and I'll see you on my next news break. And I'll see you on my next news break. John sat back as the song began and sipped his coffee some more. This was his day to day, every day, and John found that he loved it more and more as days went on. He was John Marvolo, the voice of Kashmir, and he wouldn't want to be anything else. He could see on the teleprompter that Gladys was sending him notes about the upcoming stories, and smiled as he looked at what was coming today. It was going to be a great day in Kashmir, and he hoped that the people out there knew how lucky they were. While the rest of the world seemed to be falling into despair, the people of Kashmir went about their days as they had most days, as if they didn't have a care in the world. Would that everyone could live so well. "John," Gladys said as she came over the intercom, "you've got a caller." John laughed and shook his head. "Is it Sybil again?" He could hear the smile on Gladys's face. "Same time every day. She claims last night that she had a visit from Bigfoot." "Put her through," John said, as he adjusted the papers on his desk. It seemed the real news could wait, because Sybil's news was rarely educational, but often entertaining. As the song ended, John swapped back over to his mic and told the people that he had a call in. Hang on. "It's our very own Sybil Matthews, and she has seen something truly spectacular." John swapped it over, and Sybil was overjoyed to have an audience, as usual. "Thanks for taking my call. I was sitting on my back porch last night, having some tea and decompressing, and who should come out of the woods but Bigfoot. He said he had a message for us, and I could think of no better place to do it than on your show. I'm touched that you would think of us, Sybil. Among other things that I won't go into, he told me to let your viewers know that hard times might be on the way. He says it gets stranger in the woods every day, and something big is about to happen. He says not to lose hope, though, because, like many storms before it, we will weather. He seemed to have a lot of respect for the people of Kashmir. He calls us resilient and tells us that he knows we'll still be here when the storm clears. Well, next time you talk to him, you tell him that we appreciate his vote of confidence, and tell him to stay safe out there." "I sure will, John. You keep spreading the good word, and much love from out here in the cedar swamp." John told her to be safe as well, and then sent his listeners back with more music as he looked out the window and over the top of the roofs in Old Town. There was always something to be seen going on in Kashmir, no matter who you were or where you were at, and John was just glad that he got to bring it to the people who needed it. Whatever storm comes, he told himself, Kashmir will always need a voice, and that voice will always be the unshakable John Marvolo. And that's it. I figured we needed a little something to break it up a little bit. We've been having too many interconnected stories, and sometimes, you just need a little something different. Kashmir sure does have a lot of interesting people, though. Like, the more of these stories I write, I think the more I realize just how much, what's the word? How much personality Kashmir has. Like, there really is no place like it. And I think that's good. I think it's nice that we have our own little place like that. Well, I think we're going to go on to the Stragview story this week. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a big event coming up in Stragview, so be sure that you keep your listening ears on, because it's going to be pretty cool. I think maybe the warden's about to eat some crow, but we'll see how it goes down. Hopefully, it doesn't go too badly for him, because I don't know about you guys, but the Warden is definitely one of my favorite characters. I like all my characters, but the Warden is just somebody that I really like to talk about. And I'm really glad to be able to bring you guys the Kashmir stories. So, this week we're doing The Calm Before, which is our Kashmir story this week. So, let's get right into it, I suppose. CO, this is BS. You could almost hear the tendons in Sergeant Mandrus's neck as he turned his head to look at the inmate. The officer sitting beside him, Officer Kyle, was already preparing to do damage control. But the sergeant put his hand up and approached the window instead. Sergeant Mandrus had been doing this job for a decade, and he was probably one of the longest-standing officers who still worked at Stagview. Most of the rest had gone by now, packing it in as conditions got steadily worse. But not Mandrus. He's... yeah. His dad had worked corrections, and his grandfather had been a cop. There wasn't going to be any quitting for him, and he had too much time in to stop now. He had spent the better part of a decade listening to these guys bitch and moan about one thing after another, and he wasn't about to sit here and take it for one more minute. What seems to be the issue, inmate? Warden. I mean, he's like a cat that just sits around looking for mice to torment. Like, clearly he loves what he does, but what he does is not altogether wholesome. They've taken everything away from us. We can't work in the kitchen, we can't work in the laundry, and now we can't even work on the grounds. It's bad enough we're in prison, but now we can't even do anything. I want to know what's going on. Why all of a sudden are we not allowed to do anything, like, a little extra on the side, or even just get out of the dorm so we don't have to be here all day? Mandrus stood up from his chair, rising to his full and impressive 6'2". It didn't hurt that the inmate he was speaking to was on the ground, about 2 feet below him, and it took some of the bluster out of the man when he had to look up at the sergeant. Do you know what these stripes on my arm mean, inmate? Yeah, means you're a sergeant. Correct. Now, which one of these stripes leads you to believe that I'm the warden of Stagview? Huh, you wish you were the warden. That got a smile and a chuckle from Mandrus. He wished he were many things. Rich, wealthy, good-looking, but never once had he wished that he was the warden of the prison. In a world of thankless jobs, that was a thankless job amongst thankless jobs. The warden had to eat all kinds of shit, and then he had to take all the strife by himself. There wasn't enough money in the... yeah, I could talk. Ooh. I guess I've got too mmany cats for that to be a problem. I wish they'd eat some of the cockroaches that I keep finding around my drawing rack, but I think the guy's supposed to come and spray for those pretty soon. There wasn't enough money in the state to convince Mandrus to be the warden of a place like this, though it might be interesting to see them try to convince him. On that, you are wrong. My question, though, is what makes you think I have anything to do with the jobs you work or what you do all day long? The inmate threw his hands up at that, which was about what he had expected, and Mandrus took his seat again and resumed doing very little, one of his favorite pastimes. He liked working in the prison because it was 80% sitting on ass and about 20% of actual work. Yeah, that's going to bug me. That's true, Osiris. That was a metric that some people would have found dull as dishwater, but to him, it was a great way to make 24 and a half an hour. Why did they take all the jobs away from the inmates? Officer Kyle asked. Mandrus shrugged. Who knows? Probably some security reason or another. If they took it away, it was probably for a damn good reason. Either way, it's above my pay grade, and way above yours, kid. So don't give it a lot of thought. Hang on a second, guys. Kid brother keeps calling. I'm going to tell him I'm live streaming. There we go. Okay. Mandrus had seen a lot in his time at Stagview. He'd seen inmates kill each other. He'd seen a few escape attempts. He'd even seen a... Mandrus had seen a lot in his time at Stagview. He'd seen inmates kill each other. He'd seen escape attempts. He'd even seen a pretty good rendition of Sharky's Machine put on by a bunch of inmates out on the rec yard who were trying to remember the plot of the movie. But in all that time, the only thing you learned for sure was not to question the chain of command. Questioning the chain of command was how you got fired, or even worse, how you find yourself doing a lot... If I could talk, God. How you found yourself doing a whole lot of work that was really none of your business at the end of the day. If they wanted to take the jobs away from the inmates, then they would take them away. Period. End of story. That was all she wrote. At the end of the day, Mandrus didn't really care what these guys did all day, as long as it didn't get him in trouble. It was really none of his business. I know what I saw. Dude, there's no way that's what you saw. Derek looked at Mark with growing anger, but it was hard to really get mad at his words. Derek couldn't believe what he'd seen either, and that was the problem. You couldn't exactly tell anybody what you would... what you had seen if you didn't really believe it yourself. If you guys are just joining us, we are reading our Stagview story for the week, and we're about halfway through it. So, if you're just joining us, you're joining us at a pretty good time. I'm telling you, Derek said, as he poured cream into his coffee, there's something fishy about the new program in the laundry room. I don't know what it is, but it's not healthy. Mark laughed. What? You trying to tell me they have zombies working in the laundry room? Derek put his hands up, begging Mark to quiet down. Don't say shit like that. I could probably get fired for even mentioning it. The fact that they haven't told anybody means that they probably don't want anybody to know about it. Yeah, or, more likely, you walked through a bad batch of K2 smoke during your round and hallucinated some off-the-wall stuff. Derek rolled his eyes and spooned sugar on top of his cream. Yeah, that might have been a viable story if I hadn't been out of the dorm for about an hour before I saw them. I'm telling you, there's something fishy going on. They're taking all the inmates' jobs away, and they're starting to get restless about it. They're going to have a full-scale riot on their hands before long. All they have to look forward to is wreck and medical call-outs. That's going to get old real fast. And then they're going to find entertainment somewhere else. That's still not even the biggest issue here, though. The biggest issue is, he said as he pitched his voice low again, is who is taking their jobs. Look, Morgan, if you say you saw it, I believe you. But it's really out there and not something that's going to be easy to wrap my head around. I think I'd believe it if you told me you saw a ghost in the dorm. Most of us have seen shit like that, but a whole laundry room full of them? That trip is a little hard to swallow. I believe you, came a voice from behind him. Both of them turned, and Derek was surprised to find the old guy, who usually worked post, sitting in the break room. It was unusual to see him out of a truck, but he did still work confinement sometimes. It was even rarer to see him out of confinement when he was on this side of the fence, and if half the stories Derek had heard were true, he was supposed to be the guy that would believe almost anything. Mark scoffed, but the old man didn't seem to care. Well, that's just great, Derek. At least you have one person who swallows this crap. You two talk it over. I gotta get back to my dorm before count time. Mark left, and Derek took a seat across from the old man, the infamous Sergeant Mobley. So, you're saying you don't think it's far-fetched? Derek asked. Sergeant Mobley shook his head. Sure don't. I saw him myself. I saw them myself. I saw them myself a few months ago when I was out on post. That made Derek want to roll his eyes, and he had to refrain from doing so before he ran off the only person that seemed to be buying what he was selling. You saw ghosts out on post? Sure did. So did quite a few of us. At least 4 of us that I know of. They'll never admit to it. We were all sworn to secrecy, but we saw them. Sworn to secrecy? Derek said in disbelief. By who? Mobley took a sip of his coffee and fixed him with a very knowing look. I think you can guess. He was right. Derek could certainly field a guess on who would tell people not to talk and then expect them to do it. There was only one real king here in Stragview, and everybody knew it. There was one man who could tell you to jump, and there wasn't much you could do but jump. Derek glanced around out of habit to make sure he wasn't being eavesdropped on before he went on. You're talking about the warden. Hang on. There we go. I like the text-to-speak. It lets me get a lot of work done, but man, they mess some stuff up pretty bad. Who else? Mobley asked. You can be sure that if someone like this is going... Try that one again. Who else? Mobley asked. You can be sure that if something like this is going on, then he either authorized it or is the cause of it. Derek nodded. That logic tracked. Nothing happened here without the warden knowing about it, and that was a fact. Some days, he sat up in that tower like a king, just watching all the peasants down below, and it always made Derek feel a little weird. There was talk that the warden wasn't exactly human himself, but that was just talk. Nobody really believed that shit. And if they did, they kept it to themselves. The last thing you wanted to do was get a reputation as a blabbermouth and have the warden... Ugh. And have the warden suddenly make you disappear. That was more loose talk too, but more people seemed to believe it rather than not. In Stragview, the warden might as well be God. I don't have long before I have to get back to my post, Mobley said. So why don't you tell me what you saw, and maybe we can compare notes. Derek told him the whole story, front to back, and when he finally told all of it, he expected Mobley to look at him like he was crazy. He expected the old man to sit his coffee cup down and tell him that wasn't anything to get excited about, and that he might want to wipe around his ears because they were awfully wet. You just got used to that kind of thing in the Department of Corrections. Everybody always had a better story than yours. Everybody always had a more exciting one. Instead, Mobley put down his coffee and nodded, saying that it sounded like he had seen something terrible. That's it? You believe me? Well, I've seen things too, kid. Things that might make you believe stuff. Things that make me believe. Yeah. I gotta stop improv here. Things that make me believe your story more than others might. I know some of the restless dead that make Stragview their home, and I wouldn't want to... And I wouldn't want to run into them either. So what do we do about it? He asked, but Mobley only shrugged. COs especially gossip. Not much you can do. I assume that much like me, you have bills to pay, so your best bet is going to be to keep your head down and your mouth shut. Derek looked into his half-full coffee cup and felt kind of hopeless. This was a big deal, and if Mobley was to be believed, there really wasn't anybody he could tell. It made him feel a little better to know that somebody else knew and believed him, but he was really hoping for some practical advice on how to handle it. Keep your head down and your mouth shut hadn't exactly been what he was looking for, but he supposed that would have to do. The old man patted him on the back, and Derek jumped, having not realized that he'd gotten up. I'll be in confinement tomorrow night. Let me talk to Cap and see if he'll let you work with me. Sometimes it helps to have someone to talk to, and I can definitely share some stories. That'll make you feel a little bit better, I think. Derek nodded, getting up as he brought his coffee with him. I don't think I've ever worked in confinement. It's something I've always kind of wanted to do. I've just never been selected for it. Well, Mobley said, the story I gotta tell you is better with visuals, and there's no better visual than the shadowy remnants of Quad 2, and the showers that spawned it. Just what are you planning? Strauss asked, when he passed Miss Evergreen in the hallway and admin. Oh man, they killed that one. Miss Evergreen turned to look at him, and her smile could have given people diabetes. A.W. Strauss, I can't imagine what you could mean. Strauss crossed his arms and gave her a less than approving look. I think you know... Oh, somebody woke up from their nap and decided to be noisy. I think you know exactly what I mean. You've taken away all of the work programs from the inmates and given them to your little ghoul squad. You have the warden so twisted around your finger that I can hear his spine groan, and your actions have put us in a very compromising position with our charges, to the point we are in danger of a riot. All of these things are common knowledge, and yet the warden doesn't seem to see it. So I'll ask again, what are you up to? Miss Evergreen smoothed her dress and turned to give Strauss her full attention. She was a pretty woman. Nobody would have argued she wasn't, but she was possessed of an odd steel that you normally didn't see in women her size. Strauss's mother had been possessed of that steel, and it had helped her escape his drunken father before he could put one of her children in the hospital. Strauss had liked it then, but it was not something he particularly wanted to see in this young woman, especially when she was so close to upsetting everything that he had worked for here. I'm saving the prison money, Mr. Strauss. Wasn't that what you wanted? Didn't you want the prison to be more economical? Didn't you want a tighter bottom line? Not if it is going to put us in full rebellion. She smiled, but none of the sweetness was there this time. I'm sorry. I was under the impression this was a prison. Aren't you supposed to have charge of these men? Aren't you supposed to have them under control? Normal. Aren't you supposed to have them under control? There we go. Ugh. Just about done with our Stragview story if you're just joining us. So we're about to get into the short stories if you're listening along. Control is an illusion in this place, Strauss said, as studious as any law professor. The men in here give us control for only as long as we can take it. When they sense weakness, when they sense... I don't know what they were going for there. When they sense unrest, they will take that as a sign to wrest that control back from those who can no longer keep it. She sniffed. So keep it. I'm simply doing what I was hired to do. If you don't like it, then I can take my show on the road. Strauss shook his head. You speak very well, but it doesn't take a genius to realize you don't have the prison's best interest at heart. Why do these things, if not for the betterment of all of us? Why does anyone do anything? Is it because we love something? Or is it because we despise it enough to watch it burn? I don't understand. But I will tell you now, if your little games lead to the fall of this prison, you'll have worse things than me to deal with. My dear Mr. Strauss, there are far worse things than you at work here. Pray that you don't discover any of them. She left with a swish of her hips and a knowing smile spread across her face. A.W. Strauss was left to hope that whatever games she was playing, it was a game the warden was better at. And there we go. Oh my goodness. Hey, bestie. Glad you could make it to a live stream. Brandy's pretty cool. You guys should check out her channel, too. Well, I'm glad I can keep you company in the background. I definitely love my Saturday live streams when I do live readings. So you've come at an opportune time. Oh, Brandy does a lot of games, and she's been doing some topical stuff lately too, like the age verification thing and a couple of different things. I like watching her videos. They're really cool, and she's pretty cool too. I'm in her community on Discord, and we all have a lot of fun. You guys should check her out. She's the best. Alrighty, I think it's time for our short stories. And I've got a couple of good ones tonight. Let's see. I think we'll do deer fever first. So, this one's about a hunter and the thing he finds while he's out hunting for deer. So, I hope you guys enjoy it. Hey, Brandon. Good to meet you. I tried that once. It didn't go over well. I might do it some more. I don't know. I've got a lot of horror games built up. It might be something fun to do. I just didn't get as much interest in the horror games there, Brandon. People watched, but I don't know. It just wasn't their bag. I guess people like the stories better. But I like games of all sorts. It's something I wouldn't mind doing a little more of. Anyway, I'm going to read some deer fever here. I might be in trouble. I will most assuredly have some questions to answer, but right now, I just want to get it all down while it's fresh. I don't want to convince myself that something else happened by the time the police get here, because if I think too hard about it, I know I will. I want to remember it all clearly, because I know what I saw, and I'm not going to backtrack on it. I'm an insurance adjuster by day, but when the weather changes and it gets a little chilly out, I like to fancy myself a hunter. It's an old habit from when I was a kid, something I usually do to remember my dad, and I've gone every year to Harper's Woods since I was about 9 years old. I remember fondly the times when I would sit in Dad's old tree stand, full of anticipation that was an unlikely... was as unlikely to be rewarded as it was to be sated with a buck or a fat doe. Dad had a half dozen of them hanging in his study, and I remember the 8-pointer that he would always point to whenever he was a little drunk and crow over it, like it was the biggest deer in the known world. You could never bag such a magnificent animal, Kenneth, not if your life depended on it. Dad had been dead for 5 years, but I think I was still chasing that deer that would prove him wrong. You too, Brandon. I was in the old stand that we'd had... if I could talk. I was in the old stand that we had always used. A stand that I was sure other people used when we weren't around. When we were in town, however, it seemed to be our sole providence. We would set up here for hours, and even though we didn't always get a deer, we went home with meat more often than we didn't. It wasn't as popular as some of the big hunting reserves in the area, or even the people who salted their stretches of land for maximum deer output. But it was very private and away from the noise of the road and the presence of other hunters, and I'd always liked it. I don't think I'd ever seen another human being out here other than Dad when we went hunting, and to me, it was a chance to get away from the city and return to nature for a little while. When you spend all your time in a cubicle, it's sometimes nice to get away from that noise. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. I thought there was something I could click. Oh, dang it. I thought there was something I could click for that. Where were we? I had upgraded the stand recently, something Dad probably wouldn't have approved of. I'd gone and got one of those really nice camouflage tents that you see at the Bass Pro Shop. Those professional stands you can sit in relative comfort while you wait for your deer to wander by. I had been sitting up here for almost 2 hours with my John Grisham novel and a thermos of coffee, enjoying the sounds of the birds and the general ambience of the woods. I'd seen 4 deer today, but none of them were big enough to shoot. 2 of them had been... I don't know what the... There we go. 2 of them had been doe, who looked like they hadn't given birth to their first fawn yet, and the other 2 were a small buck with a fawn that looked smaller than my collie dog back at home. I had let them all go, seeing them through binoculars as opposed to the sight of my gun. Sometimes I bring my Nikon camera out here and get some really nice pictures, but I hadn't thought to bring it this time. I was really hoping to bring home a deer so I could have it butchered and enjoy the venison through the winter. So when I saw the buck come out during mid-afternoon, I knew I had found the one I was looking for. He was massive. He would have put Dad's 8-pointer to shame, and the chest on him made me groan at the thought of carrying him out of the woods. It was 1.5 miles to my truck, and this fellow looked like he weighed an upwards of 500 pounds. Still, this was the one I'd been waiting for all these years. This was the one that was going to silence my dad, as he reminded me that I'd never get a deer as big as the one he had brought home. Carefully, oh so carefully, I set down my binoculars and picked up my rifle. It was nothing fancy, just an old bolt action that my dad had given me before I went to college, but it was one of my favorite hunting rifles. I sighted through the scope, watching as he dropped his head to graze, and as I put my tongue between my teeth, he turned suddenly and looked back at the woods. Graze, not graze. I cursed silently, sure that I was about to lose him, but instead, he bent back down and continued eating. I lined up my shot, wanting to hit him square so I didn't damage the meat too badly. I didn't hang trophy heads in my house the way that Dad had, but if I'd been so inclined, this fellow would have been going into my living room. As I chose the shot, he looked up from the grass and seemed to see me for half a second. We made eye contact through the scope. My brain was sure that he was about to bolt, but instead he went right on grazing as I slipped my finger over the trigger. Then, without warning, something came behind it as the oblivious deer kept eating. It was something terrible, something I wouldn't have believed if I wasn't looking at it through the scope of my rifle. I thought it was a wolf at first, maybe a wolf that had been injured or tripped into some nuclear waste. He was about twice as big as any wolf had a right to be, and the longer I looked at him through that shaking rifle scope, the more I came to believe it might be 3 times as big. His fur bulged in odd places. His head was strangely elongated, and He didn't crawl right. Watching him move was like watching some kid pretend to be a wolf, and it was more unsettling than the creature itself. Despite how oddly it moved and looked, it seemed to be utterly silent as it went about its business. The deer had no idea it was being stalked, and seemed to be placidly eating as if its life was not in immediate danger. I thought about cracking off a warning shot, just so the deer wouldn't get eaten. Yeah. I thought about cracking off a warning shot, just so the deer wouldn't get eaten by this thing. Excuse me. All right, where was it? But my hands were shaking too badly for me to even think about sighting properly. Also, and this was the weirdest part, I did not want that creature to realize that I was here, if it didn't already. I know how that sounds, a guy with a gun worried about some animal knowing that he was here, but the size... the sight of it. The sight of it was just so unnerving that I couldn't get the thought out of my head. I'd always had a deep sort of fear about being eaten by a wild animal or another person, even and just seeing this thing made all the old fears come back again. I just knew that if this creature got its teeth into me, they would never find anything but skin and bones. And maybe not even that. Going to change something, but now I can't remember where it was. I was helpless to do anything, but watch as it came within a hair's breadth of the creature before jumping on it and begin to maul it. There we go. The deer seemed to be as surprised as I was, and even though it attempted to flee, there was nowhere to go. The creature had dead to rights. There we go. And all either of us could do was watch it happen. It tore into the deer like it hadn't eaten in days, and the field was spattered with blood. I found myself wishing that I'd taken the shot. This creature didn't deserve to die like that. No creature deserved to die like that, and as I watched it devour the majestic buck that I'd been planning to kill myself, I became irrationally angry. What? Right. Not right. What right did this creature have to take what I had been planning to kill? He had no right, no more right than I had had, and I found my aim getting a little steadier as I sighted down and put the scope on the misshapen thing. Ugh, I don't like that. Wish the weather would figure out what it's doing so my allergies would calm down. There we go. And put the scope on the misshapen thing. Just as the deer had. Yeah. Just as the deer had. It suddenly turned its head and looked at me through the sight of the rifle. And I almost missed my shot all over again. In that second, I could swear that the creature could see me. But I steadied my hands and lined it up as those piss-yellow eyes looked at me through the sight of my gun. It seemed to be daring me to shoot, maybe even begging me to. And finally, I pulled the trigger and obliged him. The shot hit him dead center of the forehead. Not a shot I could have ever made again. I can assure you, and as the creature fell down, I sat... As the creature fell down, I sat back in the stand and felt my hands shaking. I'd killed it. I had done that. But I wasn't sure it brought me any joy to do so. I'd killed it out of anger, not out of any real desire to kill it. And I steeled myself as I put my rifle down and picked up the pistol that I sometimes brought with me. I didn't really want to go down there and see it, but I realized that I had to. I had to go down and see this creature, even if I wasn't going to believe that it had ever existed. That's not the line. Even if no one was ever going to believe it had actually existed. If I went down and it wasn't there, then I'd be able to tell myself that it had just been a fluke, something I'd seen out of the corner of my eye and made too much out of. I was almost hoping for that, the creature not being real. It would have been a mercy, but whether I wanted to or not, I knew I had to go see it. My mind wouldn't be satisfied with what I had done until I went and laid eyes on the beast and made sure that it was dead. I thought I was going to fall out of the tree stand a couple of times on my way down, but somehow I managed to make it to the ground, and that was where I found the last thing I expected to. Lying in the field were two corpses. One was the majestic body of the deer, its flesh torn and its eyes staring at the sky, as if to ask why this had happened. The head was still perfectly intact, not a bit of flesh destroyed or disturbed. It was as if the creature had severed the head cleanly and left it for later. If I wanted to take it and put it on my wall, I would have been able to do so easily. I remember seeing myself reflected in those perfect shoe-button eyes and feeling a sense of dread run through me as I moved to look at the other thing that I had killed. The second corpse was not that of a monster wolf, but of a man. He wasn't an impressive man. No, what? no brute that I had mistaken for a wolf, but an old man in the late stages of life. He was naked, his modesty covered by a nest of steely gray hair, and the longer I looked at him, the sicker I became. He had a perfect hole in the middle of his forehead, his face still dripping with blood, and there was no question that he had been what I had seen. He was sprawled out on the ground, spread eagle, they would have called it, and his own eyes were looking up at the sky, just like the deer's had. His face seemed almost thankful, like I had done him some kind of great favor by killing him. And I remember my hands shaking as they held the gun that I'd been prepared to shoot the creature with if it wasn't dead. I had to slide that gun into my pocket as I looked at him, because I was really afraid that if I looked at him for very much longer, there'd be 3 corpses in the field, as opposed to 2. I called the police because I didn't know what else to do. I told them there had been a hunting accident, and that I'd accidentally shot some feral old man, and now I needed them to come and get the body, and probably take me to jail. The town where my hunting lease is small, barely 1,200 people, but the sheriff seemed very interested in getting out here, so that he could get the body and ask me some questions. That was about 20 minutes ago, and I haven't been sure of what else to do except write this up so that there's some account of why I saw fit to shoot a half-naked old man who was out in the field that day. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination or some kind of deer fever, as my father used to call it, but I have no explanation for what I've done today. Dad used to say that was why he had this hunting lease so far out in the woods. He would say that when a man is hunting, sometimes he'll slip into a state of deer fever, where another hunter or a rock or a barn or anything that slips into a man's peripheral vision will become the deer that he's longing to see. He told me once that sorry, guys. He told me once, as we sat around a campfire and he cracked open his 4th or 5th beer, that sometimes when a man is intent on bringing home a kill, he sees all kinds of things that aren't there. Your cousin Herschel is doing 10 years in prison because when he was 20, he shot a man while he was out hunting. He swears up and down that the man was a buck, a big buck in fact, and that the man came I have no idea. I think I understand what that's trying to say. And that the man came about later. He swears this, son, but I went with his aunt to see the man he shot. He was in an orange safety vest. He had a hat with a stripe on it, and he was dressed like no deer I'd ever seen. When I went to talk to your cousin and ask him how he could have mistaken a man in such garb for a deer, he told me that he'd seen it, plain as day, and he would say so before the judgment seat of God, if that was what it required. He still says it to this day, and I believe him. Be sure of what you're shooting at before you pull that trigger, boy, because it might change your life in ways that you haven't even thought about yet. I understand Cousin Herschel's dilemma now, though it may be too late to do me any good. I'll have a lot of questions to answer once the sheriff gets here. I know some of them are likely to be hard questions, but I hope to God that he's an understanding man. I know what I saw, and it wasn't any deer fever. These are old woods and sometimes contain strange things. I just hope that when the sheriff gets here and sees the old fella. Maybe he has more answers than I do. Alrighty, that's deer fever. Whew. Got one more, I think, and then it'll be time to wrap it up. Going from the woods to the playground, this one's a story about an odd game of hide and seek. So, we're going to read Hide and Seek with the Missing Kids. So I hope you enjoy it. So, Bobby, what do you want to do after school? Bobby and I had been friends since pre-K, and we always hung out after school. We usually rode bikes or went fishing or did any number of other things, but Bobby had a weird look on his face today, and I suspected that today's activities might be a little out of the ordinary. He had been talking to some of the other kids at lunch, 5th graders, and God knows what they had told him. Many of them were the kind of boys to go off into the deep woods or explore the abandoned house on Cranmore Street. And I shuddered to think what sort of trouble they might get Bobby and I up to if he took them seriously. Well, Jesse, I think today we're going to the park. I looked at him funny. The park? That's a little babyish, isn't it? Maybe if we were going to ride the swings or something, but we're not going for that. That got me curious. Which park are we going to, Bobby? Bobby smiled, and it reminded me of the smiles of those 5th graders who sometimes try to get younger kids into trouble. We're going to the park over by the Drummond Apartments. I gasped. I knew exactly which park he was talking about, and he must have lost his mind. The Drummond apartment complex were a place that everybody had heard of. It was where the guys at the steel field lived when they were off shift, the place the log truck guys lived when they weren't driving big rigs, the kind of place that my dad said you could purchase some time with a woman if you couldn't get one of your own. My mom would have smacked him if she'd heard him talking like that, but it was just Dad, and sometimes he said things that he probably shouldn't have said around a child. Drummond Apartments were also next to the park that the city had closed after those 5 kids went missing. Everybody knew about the missing kids, the ones that had gone missing back in '98. Nobody was sure where they had gone, but everyone agreed that they'd been playing in the Drummond Park, a park at the edge of the woods. Other people said that now the park was haunted, and that if you went there at night, you could see ghost people at that park, as they played or did whatever it is that ghost people did. No one was sure if they were the missing kids or if they were just ghosts that had been brought about by all the sadness that had followed the place. But all the kids at school talked about them, and we all agreed that they probably existed. Why in the hell are we going there? I asked him. Because the big kids told me about how I could play hide and seek with them. That piqued my interest. What? Like playing hide and seek with ghost people? He smiled. Yup. They said if you go there in the afternoon, just as the sun's setting, you could call out. You could call out to one of them by name and play hide and seek. It sounded pretty fun, so I figured we'd try it. Unless, that is, you're a baby. I bristled a little. I'm no baby. Good, he said. Then you won't mind if we play Nintendo at your house until the time comes. I almost laughed, thinking this was just some ploy to play my new game system. The N64 had just come out, and my aunt, whose husband was said to be richer than Croesus, had gotten me a bunch of games for it. Bobby's family was not well off. I don't even think they had a TV, and he liked to come over and play games a lot. Oh, definitely. I didn't mind. Bobby was my friend, and friends shared, so when we sat down to a game of Mario Kart, I assumed that would be the last I'd hear about the Shadow Kids or anything like that. We'd play Mario Kart on my Nintendo for most of the afternoon, and as the sun continued to sink, I thought maybe he'd forgotten about it. And he'd remember that it was going to be dinner time soon and asked to stay. Instead, at about 5:30, he got up and told me it was time. Time for what? I asked. Time to go play some hide and seek, he said. I winced. I winced as I hit the pause button on the controller, honestly having forgotten about the whole thing. Come on, Bobby, let's just play some more Mario Kart and then eat dinner. We don't have to go all the way out there on a dare. I bet they're just messing with us anyway. Bobby was already heading out the door to my room, but he turned and looked back at me as I continued to beg him to call it off. I'm going with or without you. I want to see what's up. Try that one again. I want to see what's out there, and I'll remind you how much of a baby you are at school if you don't come with me. That pretty much settled it, and I hesitantly came with him as we went to the park to see what all the fuss was about. We got to the park about an hour before sunset, which would leave us just enough time to play a quick game and then head home before Mom started getting worried. If Mom had known where we were, she would have been worried anyway. We had both been told not to come here by our parents, and Bobby's mom would have had a bird if she had known he had gone anyway. I think all the adults in town thought the place was haunted as much as the kids did, though most of them were probably too adult to say as much. What is this? There we go. Even before the incident, the place had been creepy. The kids who played there, mostly being local ones that lived in the apartment complex. The other kids played at one of the other parks in the area, and it was well known that homeless people sometimes spent the night there. There were no homeless people there today, and as we came into the play area, I remembered thinking I was already seeing ghosts. It wasn't like the ghosts in the movies. They weren't wearing bed sheets or looking like zombies. It was more like moving TV static. As I watched, they were wavy images that walked around the little area, and they made my eyes hurt a little as I tried to focus on them. They were human-shaped, but definitely not human beings. It was like someone's shadow had gotten up and decided to amble around. No wonder there were so many rumors about there being ghosts here. especially with these things walking around. Okay, Bobby said, and he shook his arm like he was getting ready to perform a magic trick. That one again. And he shook his arms like he was getting ready to perform a magic trick. The bigger kids say that all you have to do is call out to one of them by name, and they'll play hide and seek with you. You can't get caught, but if they can't find you in 60 seconds, then the game is over, and you have to start again. What happens if they catch you? I asked hesitantly. Bobby shrugged. They didn't say, but they made it sound bad. Probably best that they not catch you. That was far from reassuring, but Bobby didn't give me a lot of time to talk him out of it. He screwed his face up like he was trying to remember something, and then he looked over at the weird ghost people and said a name that I was unfamiliar with. Lucius Ryder. You should, Leia. Absolutely. I didn't know the boy, but I recognized the name. They had certainly said it enough times at the assemblies. They would read them out over and over again, like they thought that one of us might be able to identify them just because we heard the name for the 1,000th time. We were all nervous about what had happened, but none of us really knew what was expected of us at these assemblies. Did they think we'd just remember information all of a sudden? Fat chance of that. Most of us could barely remember what we had for breakfast that morning. One of the shadow people broke itself off from the rest and walked slowly towards us. Terry was looking at it as if he thought this was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. But I was very little pleased with the results. It had come a little too willingly, like it wanted us to call it. And I was no expert on ghosts, but I knew it usually wasn't a good idea to invite things in that wanted you to call them. Lucius Ryder, we challenge you to hide and seek. We hide, you seek. Do you accept? The ghost thing didn't nod, but it did sort of glitch forward and then straighten again. It lifted its hands to cover its lack of eyes as it began to resonate, its body pulsing outward. Bobby grabbed me by the arm and said we needed to hide. I didn't know how long we had, but one look at that thing told me I did not want to be found. We both tore off into the playground, and one look at the tube slide told me that was the place I wanted to be. Bobby kept moving after I broke off, and I got to the top of the tube just as the resonating sound ended. It was like an echo in a cave when it finally stops bouncing off the walls for longer than you expected. I figured it must mean that the ghost kid was done counting. I climbed into the tube, positioning my feet so that I'd stop myself halfway down, and tried to hold myself there so I wouldn't be seen. My arms and legs started to get tired pretty quickly, but I only had to do it for a minute, and I thought I'd probably be fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was counting in my head. No, let's try that again. I was counting in my head, pretty intent that this would be my first and last game. Bobby really should have told me the stakes before I agreed to do this, and as my arm shook a little, I heard something strange coming near the mouth of the slide. It was like TV static, or maybe that weird clicking sound you get from records, but it seemed to make me stiffen my arms a little more. I didn't want this thing to find me, and I hoped that Bobby had a pretty good hiding place. It moved away from the mouth of the tube and went along the side like it was looking for something. It probably hadn't thought to put itself in the middle of the tube, the position far too precarious, and I gritted my teeth as I continued to count. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Gotta change a few things here. There we go. Alrighty. I could feel the sweat running down my arms and legs, and my legs began to shake as we hit the midway point. I believed it had moved away, but I couldn't be sure. It was the scariest. Scaredest. It was the scaredest I had ever been in my life, and I'd spent a lot of time staying awake and listening for monsters in the closet. This was different somehow, like a movie where the effects are a little too good. I could feel my arms starting to give out, but I wouldn't be much longer now. 60 seconds, and then I could run home with the knowledge to never come here ever again. 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. I was getting ready to slide down and make a run for it when I heard the sound again. It was coming around the side of the slide, getting much too close to the opening, and I was afraid about getting caught. And I was afraid I was about to get caught. What would happen if it found me? Would it hurt me? Would I join their little ghostly troop, or would it be something worse than that? I didn't know, and that made it even worse. The unknown was so much scarier than what you do know. And as the sound crept up the length of the tube, I thought I could almost see a shadow stretch out before the opening. 50. Something put a hand on the edge of the tube, its ghostly fingers clenching the rim. 52. Its shadow stretched out towards the mouth of the tube, the last light of day, sending it across the sand like a gantry. 55. My arms really began to shake now. I didn't think I could hold it much longer. 56. It was leaning down. I could see the top of its head as it made to peek into the tube. 58. I tried to shimmy myself farther back up the tube, but I was afraid that any noise or movement would give me away. It was too close. I had almost been home free, but as its lack of eyes found mine, it began to resonate again in that strange musical way. Then it melted into nothing, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I had made it all 60 seconds, and as I slid down the slide and felt my feet touch the ground, a deep sense of relief filled me. It was dark now. the sun having actually set, and I hightailed it home without a care for what might have happened to Bobby. He had gotten me into this mess. He could walk home by himself. When I got home, though, my mom was on the phone with his mom. She wanted to know if I'd seen Bobby, because he had never come home from school. I told Mom that I had been walking him home, but that we had parted ways a couple of blocks from the house. She conveyed that to his mom, and she hoped that he'd be seen soon. When the police called a few hours later to ask the same questions, I gave them the same answers. I was pretty sure that I knew what had gotten him. The ghost kids had found him, and he had suffered whatever punishment came with it. They never found him, never even found a trace of him, but sometimes when I drive past that park, I feel moved to go call his name and see if maybe he'd like to play a game of hide and seek. It would confirm what I suspect already, but I'm just not brave enough to go down there and play again. It's been 20 years. I'm still not brave enough to face Bobby for a game of hide and seek. And that'll do it for us tonight, guys. I do hope you guys enjoyed the stories. Ooh, El Gusto, good to see you, man. Yeah, unfortunately, it is time for so long for us. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories. I hope you'll join me on Tuesday for our usual Tuesday hangout stream. It should be a lot of fun. And I hope I'll see you all around. You guys have a good night, and we'll catch you next time. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.